Welcome to the Christian Romance Podcast, where we go behind the books with inspiring Christian romance authors, exploring faith, love, and the journey that brings the story to life. I'm your host, Kelly Jo Wilson, and today we're chatting with Patti Stockdale. Patti is a Christian romance author who loves weaving hope, history, and happily ever afters into her stories. She's worn many hats over the years, from working with the NFL to directing a senior center talent show, but these days she's focused on writing beautiful, faith-filled fiction. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode so you can hear more about our newest book giveaway for this month. Now, here's my conversation with Patti. Hi, Patti. I am so happy to have you on the Christian Romance Podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a treat. I'm just thrilled to be here.
Yes, I am thrilled to have you. I can't wait to talk about this awesome book. This historical romance, which we were just talking before, and I'm going to convert, I'm sure, because all these wonderful historical romances by wonderful authors like yourself, I cannot get enough of these stories. And it's just making me have to get out of the contemporary game and get into the historical. You will be converting me.
That sounds great.
Well, why don't you let our listeners know a little bit more about yourself and how you started on this author journey?
Sure. I grew up in a small rural community in Iowa of about 1,000 people. I never had any aspirations to be a writer. I probably should have realized when I was a junior in high school that I was supposed to write a 5-6 page short story, and it ended up being 28 pages. I still didn't have a clue. Ended up marrying my high school sweetheart, and a year out of high school, and I didn't go to college traditionally. My husband went back to college when he was 28. I went when I was 35, worked full time, took classes in the evening at a community college, and as gradually progressed, I studied creative writing. I found out that I had a love for it once I reached my 30s. I was always an avid reader, so it's not that big of a leap. But my husband worked for the Department of Agriculture, and we kept moving around the country. And so I would take classes in Iowa, and then in Pennsylvania, and then in Virginia, and I finished in Vermont. But while I was in college, I wrote a story, a full book. It ended up getting published eventually. It was called Three Little Things. And it was based on letters my maternal grandparents exchanged during World War I. It wasn't their love story, but it inspired my book. And so I graduated. We moved again. I put the book in the closet, took a job at a nonprofit. I did some writing, but not any creative writing. And we were transferred back to Iowa. And after we were there a few years, I pulled that book out and did some more research and started going to conferences and exploring how I might get it published. And yeah, I've been writing ever since.
That's really fun. And I love that you went back to college and you were like not inhibited. I feel like so many people think that once you're out or once you're an adult, like you can't go back. There's going to be too much. You know what I mean? Like, I just love that you were like, nope, I'm going to go do this and that's it. And you just kind of followed your heart in that way. I love that. I feel like that's very inspiring.
Yeah, it's kind of like writing. You just have to persevere. I really wanted that degree. In the beginning, I didn't know what I wanted to study. I just loved to learn. And so it was so validating when I would write something and I might get, my sociology teacher one time wrote at the bottom of the page, can I keep this to show somebody how to write a paper? And I was like, honest to goodness, I said, are you sure you mean my paper? Because I was, out of school for so long. I didn't have the confidence I probably should have at that point. But it's validating. It's like, okay, maybe I can do something with this. So it was the encouragement I needed at the time to keep going.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. We always hear stories, especially like early on or pre-author days of like the rejection. So I love that you have a story of like somebody encouraging you and saying, an unexpected thing, because using it as an example, I wonder if they still do. That's like,
I'm sure they don't.
oh, I bet it's super, super fun just to even think about. And that's like just, it is super validating because, you're doing this new thing, especially. And a lot of times nobody just knows. I mean, now we have like author communities that you learn, like you said, you sort of go into conferences and such, but you don't just really know where to start. Sometimes you just like have this dream or you just like to do something. And there's not many published authors out there that it's like you could just say, hey, my neighbor published a book and I talked to him about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I love that you persevered, and you're so right in that. You do have to really step out, and especially whenever it's like following God's call for your life. It's hard, and you got to step out in faith and
Yeah.
follow it.
Always. Mhm.
But it's tough. It's tough. Did you meet anybody along the way that was really helpful, like at the conferences and things like that? Did you
Oh,
have some
always.
mentors?
Yeah. I remember meeting Tina Radcliffe. She was Tina, she writes for Love Inspired. She was so encouraging and
Mm.
she was a blessing. And I remember meeting Susie May Warren in the bathroom. I had read her book about SEQ, and then everything started to click in my head. So we had a real short conversation. Oh gosh, you go to those conferences and almost intimidated in the beginning, but it's such a warm community that everybody just embraces you. And if you're sitting by yourself for a minute, somebody's going to be there and say, "Hey, how's it going? How can I help you?" I met Amanda Cox, is a very good friend of mine. She's written some beautiful books. I met her in my first Christian Writers Conference, the ACFW, and we ended up getting in a writing group together along with Crystal Cottle. A lot of people know her books. We were all writing historical or dual timeline stories, and Kelly Gashorn was part of that group, and Kylie Woodley, and we all just kind of grew together, and it was so fun to support each other. So yeah, some of my still, I feel like I could turn to those ladies at any time and just say, "Hey, can I run this past you?" or "Let's chat." And yeah, very warm, very supportive. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like everybody, especially in this community, and I don't know, I wonder if like secular authors have that too. I would
Yeah.
imagine that there's some element of
Oh,
community just
sure.
because it's such a unique profession in that way.
Hmm.
But I feel like there's such a neat thing about like the Christian fiction community. Like everybody just wants to
Yes.
help. Like you said,
Yeah.
everybody is so willing. That's the only
Yeah.
thing that I've experienced with
Hmm.
this like random call. Like you should be a writer, like Holy Spirit guiding you, like you should go do writing and just pull you right out of nursing and do that.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
everybody, yeah, has been so, so helpful and just so willing to share anything and willing to help and willing to encourage. And especially Susan May Warren, my goodness, I could talk about her all day. She's like, because she just has such this wonderful heart to teach
Yes.
and to make this impact. And she just shares all her secrets. The SEQ is like the absolute best. It
Mm,
makes so much sense.
it does.
It's so character focused and it really kind of encompasses the whole character arc. I feel
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
like
Me too.
really focused on the motivations and the wants and the lie that, because we all have that. We all
Oh,
have that like lie we believe or, the unworthiness that we feel,
sure.
right? That we're like continually trying to fight or
Mhm.
fighting. So, yeah, just makes so much sense. And I love that they were there to support you like that. I have yet to go to the ACFW conference. The Faith, Hope, and Love conference I heard is also really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Right.
I have yet to go, but I
Me
got to get
too. I
there.
want to. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Because it's nice also to be, I would imagine, among that group, among the
I think
group of
so.
people, like in real life.
Yes, and their classes are just brilliant. So,
Mm,
yeah, I love them.
yes,
It's just not in
absolutely.
the budget to go every year, so I haven't gone now for a few years, but I'd like to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like you just kind of pick which one. I was thinking about going this year, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what
Same.
God has in store.
Yeah, same.
We'll see how it works out. But yeah, that's wonderful. So have you always had this affinity for like historical Christian fiction or was it, contemporary, you kind of just kind of fell into it? How did that happen?
That's a great question. I remember in high school, I hated history. It was so boring. I could hardly stand it. And then when I was in college at Vermont, I needed a new story. I thought I was going to write middle school fiction, and then I thought I was going to write a young adult. So my first book was geared for a young adult. And I'd finished it, needed a new project. At the same time, my mom and her sisters had discovered these letters that their parents had exchanged during World War One. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is jackpot. I'm going to borrow these stories, these letters, write my story. And they're like, no, we don't want you to have them. So I had to do some arm twisting. I'm like, you know what? It's never going to get published. And then my mom was like, well, can you change the names, and that sort of thing. So we did a little negotiating. And then I wrote this story and it ended up getting published. And I really ended up loving the research aspect of it. But, it's like a rabbit's hole. You find one thing and then you learn more. And part of the time I was writing it, I got a little intimidated. It's like, how am I going to tell this World War One story? And one of my instructors had said, Patty, you only have to tell the story through Arno's eyes, just the little scenes where he's dealing with these things with the war. And so that was reassuring that, okay, maybe I can pull this off after all. So.
Yeah, and that would be really neat to have the firsthand account of like the love story, like you said, like those letters to each other. That's really neat to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good point that you're only telling through one person's point of view, because otherwise it could be overwhelming because of just the amount of how everything is different and the time frame. And then you're trying to show like what's happening. But I feel like, that's really neat. That's one thing that I will say in the historical books that I have read. I love seeing through a character's eyes because they're like experiencing it so in such a unique way, like a different way that you probably would personally, but like it's neat to see the character arc through that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. I
It was
love that.
intimidating. It's like, I just want to make this believable. And so there were a lot of editors that looked at it too. So that helps.
I know. We can't, you got to have the editors. That's why even for my day job as a medical writer, usually, so I write, I take clinical protocol, like difficult protocols and distill them into like a plain language version so that people
very helpful. Yeah.
Can understand. Yeah. It's more like a summary versus like the 100 pages of a protocol, but, it's very helpful, but they also go through a lot of reviews. And I'll tell you the humility that comes with it, right? Like you just forget, like now I don't even, it's not, cause it's not personal. It's just people wanting to make the story better for the end reader. Right. So
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. But there is definitely some humility with all those red lines, all the red text.
Yes.
So this story that you wrote with Jody Headland is his Unforgettable Bride. And what I love so much, and I can't wait to hear about with this specific story, is how it is kind of a Cinderella retelling.
Sure.
So why don't you talk about that a little bit? How this take on this story, how your take on this story is a little bit, or your take on the Cinderella is a little bit different in this story.
Yeah. So Jody's third book came out in February, third book in this New Voyage series of her Brideship series. And then mine is the fourth and final book, and it came out in April. So we got on the phone and we brainstormed, like, what can we do that's going to be different than books 1 and book 2, make it interesting. And we kicked around some ideas, and then we thought, well, what about a fairy tale retelling? So her book, His Perfect Bride, is a take on Beauty and the Beast.
Oh.
And my book is a take on Cinderella. So the heroine, Juliet, when she was younger, she was involved in a pickpocketing ring when she was about 8 to 10 years old. And she ends up stumbling over an unconscious man who, she doesn't know it, but he is a prince. And when he awakens, he has amnesia. So there's lots of things to unpack there for a Cinderella story, but the heroine's really sassy compared to the original Cinderella, so I'd say that's another difference in the story.
Oh, that's really fun. I love that. And
Mhm.
she has to be tough. If she's in this
She
like
is tough,
pickpocketing
yeah,
thing, yeah, she has to
yeah.
be tough.
But her experience of living on the streets before she's an orphan. Her parents died when she was a baby, and then her grandpa raised her until she was 8, and then he died, and she was just trying to hide in churches and different places until she ended up somebody found her, and she joined this pickpocketing group, and she was really good at it, and she had a safe place to stay, and uh, protection and food and all of those things. But along with that came some guilt, even as a little girl, because her grandpa had taken her to church. She knew the
Mm.
difference between right and wrong. So now, as an adult, she's ashamed of her past, and she has the kindest heart there is, because she knows what it's like to not have enough and want somebody to give her a blanket or a piece of bread. So yeah, that plays a big part in the story too. She has a really good heart. She's selfless.
Oh my gosh, I love her.
Yeah, I do too. Every time I write a book, I like this heroine best. But
Oh, I love her. I immediately like see, and that's like wonderful. See, this is your wonderful work as an author because immediately just knowing her back story a little bit, you immediately want to root for her, right? Because you
you
feel
do,
bad.
yeah, you
You
do want
feel
to cheer
bad.
for
It's,
her.
she's,
Yeah,
and then now she's wrestling with guilt, even though she's just trying to survive.
yeah,
And it could be, much worse because immediately I'm like thinking as a mom, like, oh my gosh, she's 8 years old. She's like with these pickpocketers, they could be like
yeah.
using her for horrible things. And then they're
Right.
just,
Yeah,
using her to get some extra coins and whatnot, extra
absolutely.
wallets and
Mhm.
stuff. Um, but yeah, immediately rooting for her. Wonderful. So I love that idea how it's going to be anything with Cinderella. I'm such a fan of
Me too.
Cinderella.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a classic story, but it's always like the rags to riches kind of thing. There's just something really neat about it. I feel like that resonates with a lot of us that we want to have this like opportunity and have like a greater worth, than what we think we have. Um, but so with him, so this prince doesn't know that he's a prince. So
Right.
how did you do that? So this Henry, right? It's Prince Henry,
Mhm.
but
It's
he has
Henry.
amnesia. So how
Right.
was that writing
So,
that? Like
right.
how did you kind of formulate that in? Obviously no spoilers, but like what was that like writing about that?
Right. So oh gosh, I don't know how long ago it was. I polled my readers and asked them for their favorite tropes. And one of them that came back with high marks was amnesia. And I'd never thought about writing an amnesia story before. It sounded kind of challenging, and did a lot of online research. What's it really like when somebody has amnesia? They lose their memories, but they don't lose their knowledge. Is it really a problem if they fall and hit their head a second time? All of those things I had to look into. I read a few books where a character has amnesia. In fact, Jody had written one several years ago. So I read that book and some others. And yeah, it presented some challenges medically, and just him coming to terms with, oh my goodness, regarding their romance, he's like, I can't fall for anyone. For all I know, I'm married.
Mm.
That was a big challenge. And he, you know, for all he knows, he could be a servant like Juliet. But, when he was found, he only had his underwear on, but it was very high quality underwear. And his speech is really uppity, and he knows a lot of stuff, and his manners are perfect, as opposed to Juliet, who's trying to learn to be a lady. So yeah, he's just really wrestling with his identity. So that's a big part of his story. And that was challenging for me too. It's like, oh gosh, if I had amnesia and I woke up, what were the things that I would be thinking of? And Juliet finds him. Anyway, he latches onto her because when somebody has amnesia, they feel alone.
Mm.
It's just them. in their head. And then there was her. So
I love this. Because it's so sad. I feel like it's sad, but then there's so much opportunity also for some humor because of the underwear situation. Like I just am picturing like he's not in the like Monday underwear. He's
yeah.
like in the fancy silk underwear. So Juliet's like, and especially her being a pickpocket, she can probably pick out somebody who has money
Right.
and who is like, high status, right? Really quick.
Yeah, she gets a job with these two kind of eccentric sisters who are opening a tea shop, and they're teaching her to be a lady. So she's really uncouth through much of the story. But yeah.
Oh, that sounds so fun. I love it. And I love that he like latches onto her
Mhm.
for help because he doesn't know who he is. So it's like a quest, he's trying to figure out who his identity and like who he is and what happened. Oh my gosh, it sounds amazing. It's super fun.
Yay.
So this book is one thing before, because I wanted you to just touch on the series a little bit because this
Sure.
book is the book 4 you said in the series.
Mhm.
So just to give people an idea. But
Yeah.
what tropes are the readers going to find in this book? Because at
In my
romance,
book?
we love our tropes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's the fairy tale retelling. There is the Prince and the Pauper. There is second chances
Mm.
because both of them kind of recreate themselves throughout the story. There is opposites attract and just a royal story.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
super fun, super
Mhm.
super fun. I love it. I love it. Rags to riches too. Isn't that a
Words to
trope?
riches. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, is that a trope? I said it
Yeah,
earlier,
it
but I
is.
don't know if it's
It
like an
is.
official like
Yeah.
little trope that we like. And the amnesia, like your readers
Oh, that's right. And
suggested.
amnesia. That's a big one.
Yeah, the amnesia, which I honestly I don't think I've ever read a story about amnesia, like having amnesia as like a thing, as a
Mhm.
theme there. But that's
Yeah.
really neat.
Yeah, I'm not sure I had either before I started researching it.
I've seen like Hallmark movies. Like I know there's like a Hallmark movie that's really cute. It's about I think it was like something in Vermont and
Mhm.
she has amnesia. She like falls, hits her head or something. And she's supposed to be getting married and she has amnesia. And then
That
she
sounds
like
fun.
falls for the other guy. But it was cute. It was cute. I
Yeah.
don't really like the ones where they have like a boyfriend first and then they fall for this other person. I just like how it's like two people meet,
Mhm.
because the other
Right.
guy, he's not like the worst guy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's always just like, oh, he doesn't know me
Yeah.
as well as you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
That's
do.
just my personal
I agree.
thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. I like enemies to more too, like enemies to lovers and friends to lovers too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fun.
But that sounds really cool. This series, yeah, why don't you just give us a little rundown of kind of some of the other books in the series too? And these read as standalones though, correct? Like you can read
They
each
can
one.
read as standalones. They
Yeah,
can.
that's fun
Yeah.
too.
So these books are through Sunrise Publishing, and they have kind of a different model. So I'd written my first book with a different publisher, and then I wrote another historical. My agent said, "Hey, do you want to try a contemporary?" So I wrote a contemporary, and then I found out about Sunrise Publishing, where they were bringing in some established writers and having them mentor newer writers.
Mm.
And I wasn't even sure they would consider me, but I applied for that. And it was kind of a long, drawn out process. And then I was selected to write with Jody, which was super duper exciting for me. I, as authors, especially newer authors, we don't know what we don't know.
Hmm.
And the opportunity for her to mentor me was almost like a master class in writing.
Hmm.
Um, I just feel so almost teary eyed. I'm so grateful for what she poured into me and helped me look at my writing differently than I had before. I wrote the book, she edited along with an editor through Sunrise Publishing, but we would brainstorm, and especially the first book we did, I wrote in the series. She had a lot more input than the second one, but so initially, I believe she did 4 books through Bethany, maybe. I'm not quite sure.
Hmm.
And that was the Bride Ship series. And they all took place in 1863. So these was a cotton mill over in England that closed. And so, what's going to happen to all these women that were working in this mill? So somebody decided, hey, let's put them on what ended up being called a bride ship, send them to British Columbia, where there were like 10 men to 1 woman, and they can find employment there and marry someone and start their new lives. So we came up with 4 characters for our stories. Jody's first one was finally his bride. Where am I? Right there. And then my first one was, or it's book 2 in this series, was his treasured bride. And I had presented 3 premises to Sunrise saying, hey, this is what I would like my story to be about. This is the hero. This is the heroine. This is what's going to happen. And they chose this one, and it's a treasure hunt. And so it ties in, Jody's first book ties into my treasure hunt, which is fun. And then her third book, or the third book in the series, is his perfect bride. And this character, Sage, is sister to Jody's book in the first book. And then the last book is mine, his Unforgettable Bride. And she came over on the bride ship initially with the girl from book 1 and book 2. So the girls are all in each story a little bit. And then in my second to the last chapter, I bring the girls all together again. So we learn what happened to each of them.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it's very fun.
That is so crazy that they call it a bride ship. So they send them to America. Is it America or England, you said?
British Columbia. So
British Columbia. Okay.
Yep, our stories take place over there. So Vancouver Island is where my first book is set, and Judy's is on Salt Island, which is kind of between Vancouver and Victoria. And then my third book is over in British Columbia, where Victoria is now, or around there. And Jody's is in Vancouver, and Jody's is in Victoria. So we tried to put them in different places all of the time, but close enough that they could see each other.
That's pretty neat. Oh, what a neat situation. Could you imagine like going over there and there's like 10 guys to 1 girl? Oh my God. I would run.
Yeah. That's factual. That really happened. I'm grateful. My husband and I took a trip over. We flew to Vancouver and went over to Nanaimo, where my story is set. And then we went down to Victoria, and it just helped to see it all first.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really valuable.
Oh, yeah, that I would imagine so. That you can see like where they were, especially whenever, because you can do some pretty amazing research nowadays, especially, just with the internet and YouTube and different things like that. But yeah, being there and seeing it, and then it's exciting too, because you're like, oh yeah, this is like where my story's gonna be coming to life, kind of thing.
It's extremely helpful.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And it sounds amazing. Were there so you had Beauty and the Beast, that's kind of like a touch of Beauty and the Beast for the first book. And then this one with the Cinderella. Was there other retellings kind of with book 2 and 3?
Just 3 and 4.
Oh, 3 and 4.
Yeah,
okay.
Books 1 and 2 were more focused on this treasure map.
Oh, yeah. Which is also super fun.
It was. Yeah, it was fun. And it was complicated.
Oh, I bet. Because you have to really plot out all the little clues and stuff.
Yeah.
And how they're going to come across all that. Yeah. But that's really fun.
Yeah. And it's a different experience when you're writing how we were writing, So what's happening in your story is somewhat reflected in my story. And I can't say something about this character because it was different in her story than this secondary character in my story. So there was a lot of back and forth.
Oh yeah, for sure. To keep like the continuity basically, right? And not kind of give anything away, for sure. Yeah, that's really fun. Oh, how exciting.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So we're almost at time, but I did want to ask, was there any kind of Bible verse or encouraging kind of theme, like faith theme, that really helped you with this book, or even just through your author journey?
Sure. In this book, the only thing Juliet has from her grandfather was his little journal. And on the first page of the journal, it says, "Just as I am." And I chose that because I had a wonderful mother-in-law who played the piano, and she loved hymns. She played for her church, played the organ for her church. But in her house, she would get out her hymnal and she would play Just As I Am. And the words just resonated with me. So in this book, and of course, there's a character growth and character arc and romantic arc and also a spiritual arc. So for Juliet's spiritual arc, she needed to realize that God loved her just as she is, and that Henry could love her just as she is too, because she wasn't convinced that she measured up based on her past. So, as an author, I grew up poor too. I didn't go to college right out of school, and my faith journey also, I had to realize that my identity was in Christ, not anything else. So it's easier to tell a story when it's personal to you. So I drew on that as I wrote the story.
Oh, yeah. And that's so beautiful. Gosh, it's so hard to remember that, right? It's so hard to not necessarily remember, but accept it, that just as we are, because I feel like we, especially as women, feel like we got to measure up,
Yeah.
that we aren't worthy enough or not good enough, or you have to work harder. I just, even people in general, you just have to work to
You do. You got to
have
prove
Jesus.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Prove yourself and be a certain way before he can love you. But in reality, it's just like you said, he loves us just as we are. He died for us as we are sinners. And through him,
Grace.
yeah.
All about grace.
Oh, yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that. Honestly, my goodness.
My pleasure.
That's very encouraging. And I can totally see where that would fit with Juliet. And just thank you for sharing your heart about that, about how you
Oh,
grew up
sure.
and struggled with that too, because it's hard to admit sometimes, but you're writing a story like this and it's touching, pulling at your own heartstrings, that you're sharing a piece of yourself, and it's very vulnerable. So, thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I'm sure it'll resonate with people, because if you're pulling it from your heart, I feel like people just connect so much with that, because that's such a strong connection that, or struggle that so many people really deal with, right? Like, just as we are, we don't really, it's a nice sentiment, but when we're alone, when we're in our secret places at home and trying to pray and stuff, we're like, I don't know if that's true.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
how can he love me when I do this? And how can he
Yeah.
love me after these mistakes and stuff, right?
Yeah. And when you were trying to get a book contract and you see your friends getting book contracts, and it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not enough. I don't have it. I don't have what it takes. I'm not quite sure what I'm lacking. And so
Yep.
it's like, yeah, you wrestle with a lot of those thoughts and a lot of those things, and you just have to come back and to your center, and it's just like, I am enough in Christ's eyes. My writing journey is here, but my faith walk is my core. So they're two separate things, and it's important to keep your eyes on him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. It's so easy to get distracted. And that's just what, the devil wants. He wants us distracted and looking at the world for everything that it can offer us, which is really empty things, and taking it off Jesus. It's tough. My Bible study this morning was just talking about that, the relationship with Jesus, and how we, when our spiritual relationship with him, when we feel like it's in a good place, everything else falls into place.
Yeah.
Right. But and that's like the one relationship that, if it's in a good place, if we're meeting with him and, obeying and just trying our best and being honest, everything else can fall into place. He has that ability and that strength. So thank you so much for sharing that, Patty. My goodness, just
So
beautiful.
I'm happy to share. Thank you for having me on.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So where can our listeners get this wonderful book, His Unforgettable Bride, and where can they connect with you?
Oh, sure. It's available at Sunrise Publishing and Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And you know what? I think there's some other places, but I can't remember exactly where. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, follow me. You can go to Patti Stockdale it's Patti with an I, Patti Stockdale at pattistockdale.com, or friend me on Facebook. I'd love to become friends. That'd be great.
Wonderful. And I will definitely have the links in the show notes, so you can just scroll right under and just connect with Patti and get on her newsletter. I think it's so important whenever you are on the newsletter of the authors that you love, because you can give her wonderful ideas, and maybe one of your ideas will be made into a book, like how you polled your readers for the amnesia trope, which is super fun. Oh, thank you so much, Patti. This has just been lovely chatting with you. And I am so excited to read this book, His Unforgettable Bride. And just thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a new release. We love blessing our listeners with exclusive author chats and, of course, amazing books. Each month, we host a themed book giveaway where you can win a bundle of Christian romance novels and a few fun extras, too. This month's theme is one that's especially close to my heart: contemporary love. We're giving away 6 heartfelt stories that reflect the beauty of real-life romance. From second chances and small-town charm to grumpy sunshine pairs and creative careers, these books deliver all the feels, and I'm so excited to share them with you. Whether you're listening right when the episode drops or tuning in later, you can always find the latest giveaway at christianromancepodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, keep your faith, share the love, and happy reading.